Hey guys, Justin Ball here, and welcome back to video number 3 of the Work Smarter, Not Harder series. I'm sure we've all heard our teachers say,
"No, Daddy, your jags aren't consistent."
We head to the practice room, play them on repeat until we feel like they sound the same, only to come back to our next lesson completely mortified at our lack of progress. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about how I approach drags, how to give them a rhythmic bass to be more consistent, and how the context of performance informs my choices from one musical situation to another. I like to approach drags from the arm, with a fixed amount of pressure from the fulcrum determining how open or closed it is. This, in combination with a perfectly timed upward motion immediately following the second stroke, allows me to get two notes that are equally balanced. Alright, you saw the title, so what is a drag bass? For me, it's having a rhythmic context from which to base the drag in any given situation. To demonstrate, I'll quickly walk you through the 3 most common drag basses that I like to use. Starting with 16th, triplet 16th, and dotted 16th 32nd. You can also apply the same concept to 4-stroke ruffs. The thing I like most about this approach is when I find myself in an orchestral or chamber situation in which I need to play a drag a little more open or closed, I have that rhythmic basis from which to draw upon should I need it. So how do I figure out exactly which drag bass I'm going to use? Well, there are a number of factors that go into play here, but the first thing I like to do is define the tempo of the 16th notes. With tempo markings utilizing the 1/8, quarter, and half, it's pretty easy to figure that out. But what about something a little more complex with compound meter, such as Delacluse 1 or 9? For these, I like to use my boy Ryan Bomey's tempo cheat sheet. You can find literally any tempo using this helpful conversion chart, which I'll link to in the description. Next, I'll go through each of those 3 drag basses and see which one works best. Now before you start thinking that this is just some magical formula that's going to work well across the board, let's jump into something a little bit more difficult, like Delacluse 11. I like this one because it presents a variety of different factors that are going to guide my decision making in which drag bass to use. One of them is the space preceding the drag itself. At the beginning, a 16th note bass actually works pretty well as there aren't any notes in close proximity. So, for the remainder of the piece, I'll use that as a default wherever space permits. In line 2, we come across our first 4-stroke ruffs. I like to use the 16th triplet bass here, as the 8th feels too open, and the 16th is too closed. Line 3 presents several unique challenges. First, the theory that all drags have to be played from the same hand. For me, if I wield the dexterity to play drags on both hands, I don't waste as much time trying to figure out a good sticking. Next, we're challenged with the concept of flams to drags with very little space in between. To help with this, all I'm going to do is take the double beat, which we're all familiar with, and plug in flams and drags and vice versa. In the last measure of line 3, we encounter drags in between the 3rd partial of a triplet and the following downbeat. I like to approach this by using the 16th triplet subdivision on that 3rd partial like so. Notice how I'm making that transition from wrist to arm for the drags. We also encounter the same thing with 16ths later in the piece. Line 4 presents an interesting situation. As you know, I like to use arm for the drags and wrist for the singles. However, here, that transition is so fast that I have 2 choices. I can either muscle it out with the arm, or change the sticking. On that note, I think it's important to stop and discuss a little bit about stickings in general. Do whatever works best for you right now. What I like to do is write in whichever one works best for me right now. But if there's another that I feel like will work better, but I may just not have the chops for right now, what I'll do is write it in parentheses above my current sticking, then supplement work on that into my practice sessions so that I'm always getting better. If you lasted this long, you're probably thinking, man, this is too technical, I give up. While that's probably true, not all of the decisions we make regarding drag basses are technical. Take for example, line 4, measure 2. I like to play the sforzando drag a little bit more open using an 8th note triplet bass. This gives it a little bit more character and volume compared to the drags around it. Alright, enough De La Cruz talk. It's time to talk about the elephant in the room. How do we approach drags in a rudimental context such as the 14 Modern Contest solos by John Pratt? To me, one of the most enjoyable things about playing solo music literature is having a choice in the way I interpret the music. If I want to play my drags in an old school 16th format, I can. Or if I'm an orchestral guy and I like to play them all closed, that's cool. Whether I'm playing or teaching, I try to remind myself that rather than being closed-minded and preaching that all drags need to sound the exact same, to first consider the context. If it's for an orchestral audition, keep them the same. But if it's in a solo context, perhaps I should open my ears and be a little more open to the musical narrative that drags have to offer. At the end of the day, I think we're all trying to be a little more critical of our playing in efforts to make small improvements, both technically and musically. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Feel free to comment, and I'll see you guys next week.